Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're going to be playing more of the Banished seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which after we draw our cards, our entire deck gets banished. Today we're going to be playing a monsters deck that has a bunch of big units, so let's check it out. Today we're going to be playing a Force of Nature monsters deck, which means we'll be able to play a 9 strength Woodland Spirit using our leader ability. And that is a good indication of what the general theme of this deck is. Basically play big, tall units that, even in short rounds with little to no setup, we're confident that we can outpace our opponent. So I'll flip through the deck here to show you what we have and give you a little bit of explanation where necessary, leading off with Haunt, which is of course the monster scenario. And when we first play it, we'll get a Desert Banshee, which does some consuming. And whenever we play a Death Wish unit, we will get a Barbegazi, which does more consuming, and then a Night Wraith, which we want to consume to create some rats. Next we have Yghern, which is just a huge unit. Old Speartip, huge unit. Cave Troll is on the tall side, yes, but also does have Defender, so can help protect some of our more vulnerable units. We don't have many of them, so that may not be a huge factor, but we are, I think, still going to see a lot of damaging cards from our opponent, so it'll be a little bit helpful there. Katakan, relatively big, does have Thrive, and we have enough big units that we can trigger that Thrive at least a few times. Also is a Death Wish unit, so this can trigger Haunt. Ozzrel, ideally we're consuming Yghern with this, but we have enough big cards that we can be pretty confident that Ozzrel is going to be pretty big, as long as we have already played one of those big cards. Golyat is 10 strength, which is huge, and normally the big downside would be that's a Death Wish that you actually don't want to trigger. However, when our opponent doesn't have a deck, doesn't matter. No downside at all. Kayran for some consumption. Boom-Breaker is another really tall unit, and we can potentially use this to trigger some of our Death Wish if we destroy one of our own cards. Relatively big Thrive. And Jotunn situationally could be very big, assuming our opponent has played more units than we have. This could be a huge play. Ice Giant, again, really tall. Tall and consumption. Predatory Dive is something that ideally we're only using if we go second, because if our opponent plays first and plays a unit, then we play this, destroy that unit, and we don't lose anything. Griffin is tall, and ideally we're destroying one of our Death Wish units with a Death Wish that we actually want to trigger. Kikimore Worker, also tall. Rotfiend is one of the Death Wish units, and we're fine triggering this Death Wish. Aen Elle Conquerer for 4 provisions is 7 strength, and there are very few factions that can keep pace with that. Noonwraith, 6 strength for 4 provisions, also very efficient. Does have Death Wish, so it will trigger Haunt, but this is a Death Wish that we actually don't really want to trigger because it will give rats to our opponent. So there's a look at the deck, and from top to bottom, we have some really tall cards. So with that, we're looking to outpace our opponents to victory. Okay, it looks like we'll be against Aen Elle here, and they will go first. Okay, so we have Predatory Dive, and I think that is very good in this situation. Might very well be the first card that we play. Don't love having 2 Griffins because that does require that we destroy some of our own units, and at least at the moment we don't really have any that we want to destroy. So let's dump at least one of these, and then possibly even the second, because, well, I suppose when we play the Katakan, we'll spawn in an Kikimore, and that'll just be a relatively weak 3 strength unit, so we could probably sacrifice that for the Griffin, although not really any other cards here that we'd like to do that with, so I suppose that's fine. We'll settle for that. Okay, and they'll start with Saber-Tooth Tiger. Interesting. Now, will they immediately switch this over? They will. So technically, when they switch this over into its artifact form, it is an artifact, not a unit. So that unfortunately means that they've found a way around our Predatory Dive. That is a bummer. So this will deal 2 damage to any unit that we play there if it is the only unit on a row. Now, of course, we don't have any units out there right now, so that will likely be the case unless we play Katakan, because it will spawn in that Kikimore. So that is one way to work around it. The other way might be to, say, play a Cave Troll because it has some armor, so at least that damage would just reduce the armor a little bit, and we're probably okay with that. I think it has to be one of those options here. So let's go with the Katakan here. And at least for now, we've dodged that issue. I suppose we could use Predatory Dive now, and then we'd lose our Katakan and they'd lose their Saber-Tooth Tiger, though I have to imagine they're going to continue to swap this over to its other form. Elven Swordmaster is strong for 4 provision cost card, dealing some damage, and yes, they will switch that over. They use their tactic on it, so it's all the way up to an 8 now. So this is interesting. We Predatory Dive. Their lowest card is this. We lose 3, they lose 8. We would at least, right now, be ahead, although Saber-Tooth Tiger, when it does switch back, goes to a 7, and I believe that happens automatically at the end of the turn. They don't need to use an order to make that happen, so they aren't forced into playing any of their cards. Just automatically transforms back. So that means we definitely do still need to play something here. So we could Griffin to destroy this Ekimara. That's a possibility. I guess Predatory Dive is just... It is good. It's just not quite as good as I'd like here. So I think we do Griffin to destroy this Ekimara. It will trigger the Thrive there. Because now we see we're at 15 to 14. We're still behind. They're going to deal some just straightforward damage. Oh, and move it to a different row. Clever. That's, of course, going to set up the Saber-Tooth Tiger. So this is a tricky one now. Because at this stage, that means that we can play a unit in one of these rows and avoid taking the damage from the Saber-Tooth Tiger. But we can't play in 2 rows unless we play a unit and use our leader ability. Would be pretty aggressive, but is maybe not out of the question here. Again, suddenly, Predatory Dive looks a little more viable than it did before, or at least at the end of our previous turn, because we'd just be losing a 3-strength unit, they'd be losing an 8-strength unit. But we would still be 6 strength to their 7 once the Saber-Tooth Tiger comes back. So that's less than ideal. What if we... this is destroy or damage a random allied unit, so we can't deliberately target the Griffin, which is unfortunate. So I think in that case what we have to do here is let's play you, and let's use our leader ability. And we want to put you in this row here. That will trigger Thrive. And now we really want to pass after this, because we've played pretty aggressively here. They've not used any of their leader ability yet, whereas obviously we have. Okay, they're going to lock and move, which again, mostly they're looking for the move here, I'd have to think, in order to set up the Saber-Tooth Tiger. But let's just do some math here real quick. This is now in a row by itself, so this will get damaged by 2 from the Saber-Tooth Tiger. So this will go down to a 5, we'll go down to 24. Once you get Saber-Tooth Tiger back, you'll get 7 strength back, but that's not enough by itself. You would still need to do something. That means that you're already down a card, and you have to go down another card if you wanted to win round 1 here. So I think we definitely do pass. There is the damage from the Saber-Tooth Tiger. And we'll see what they opt to do here. They are playing. Wow, okay. It's bold. We'll see if it pays off for them. Cat Witcher will deal a little bit of damage. Mostly they just need some strength here. Just about anything will do the trick. And so they take round 1, but with 2 card advantage for rounds 2 and 3. Remember, no cards that were drawn here. So that's going to be more or less a permanent card advantage. Have to imagine they're going to pass immediately here. No, they're playing. So using some of their leader ability to spawn in some Elven Deadeyes again. Whenever they're going first, Predatory Dive looks good, especially if they're using leader ability plus a special card to boost that card. It's still only 6 strength, but it's 6 strength with no downside to us, because like we were saying before, if we have units out there, we're going to lose a unit of our own, and at this stage, we don't really have any units that we want to be sacrificing, so I think this is definitely the best situation in which we can use Predatory Dive, so let's do it. Okay, now they're going traps. Okay, this is interesting. I was wondering what their plan was after going with the Saber-Tooth Tiger in round 1. That was, I'd have to imagine, one of their strongest cards, but after having gone very aggressively with that, what units they have to back that up? The answer is, well, maybe not units. They're just trying to deny us the ability to play any cards here. Although we have enough strong units that even if this is, say, the 5 damage trap, we'll still be able to survive that. Just a matter of which card we want to do that with. The Noonwraith is our cheapest from a provision cost standpoint, our weakest card remaining, though it would only have 1 life remaining after that, and then if they do have any follow-up damage, they could trigger its Death Wish, which we don't want to have trigger. So I think what we do here is maybe even go with the Cave Troll, because it also has that armor. So even if it takes... Oh, except, yep, that was the risk. If it's a Pitfall Trap, then we take damage based on provision cost. That would have been another reason to go with the Noonwraith. So again, just a matter of trying to predict which trap that was going to be, and I guessed wrong. But at the end of the day, they had 0 strength from that, and just reduced our strength down to 2. And if we're keeping pace here, our card advantage is going to be enough to win things, and Great Oak is a 7 strength card, which would normally be a pretty big deal. 1 damage to go along with it is not much, so if we play almost anything here, we'll at least keep pace, if not, surpass them. So I think we probably want to save Kikimore Warrior for last, because if it does lose all of its armor, it does get destroyed, and they do clearly have some damage, so in effort to avoid that, perhaps we do not play you yet. I'm thinking we go with Boom-Breaker here, because it will damage a random allied unit by 3, and when we only have 1 strength to damage, then sure, that means we're not even taking the full 3 damage in that case, so we'll take the lead. Okay, now they're gonna move and damage by 4, which does mean we need to play another card here, but bear in mind, they have 1 card remaining. They do have their leader ability charges as well, so they have a fair bit they can do on their next turn if they really want to win this round, but of course, if they miss the mark and they can't do it, then they have no cards remaining for round 3, and we take that automatically, as long as we have any cards ourselves. So, I think what we do here is... How much strength are we expecting you to have? So you can get 6 from your 2 remaining Elven Deadeyes. So I think that means that, just running the math here, we're going to at least have to play 2 cards. So no need to be a hero here and try to do it all in 1 turn. I mean, it's basically going to be 7 strength or maybe 6 strength, regardless of what we try to do. So let's play the Ice Giant, which does force them to play another card if they want to win this round. But like I was saying, they need to go all in here if they do. So they're in a tricky spot. If they think they can do it, they have to play everything here. And they are going for it. If they miss the mark, and we can pass them in this round, then we have an automatic win in round 3. It's Nature's Rebuke is their last card. Not enough to destroy any of our cards. They have a 5 strength advantage right now, which means we can play even just the Noonwraith will be enough. We get up to 14. They have no cards remaining, so we'll take round 2 here. They clearly did not expect us to have this strong of a deck in terms of how tall our units were. They were thinking we were not going to be able to catch up, and well, with 7 strength cards all over the place, that was enough, and they're out of cards. We'll throw down an Ice Giant, and they can't do anything to stop us, so we'll throw down a Kikimore Warrior as well. And with that, we'll take the win. Okay, so it looks like we'll go against monsters here, and we will go first. And if we're going first, that probably means that we do not want Predatory Dive, so I think we dump that here. Kayran is fine to pick that up. Would be especially good if we had cards that we want to consume. Yghern is a decent option for that, but other than that, not any great options. Yghern plus Ozzrel is also great. I'm thinking we probably dump the Noonwraith here. Haunt is fantastic, although that does mean that we now need Death Wish cards, and we just got rid of what was perhaps our only one, so this is now a bit problematic. Griffin, well, I'm not sure we have anything at the moment that has Death Wish. Do we? We may have set ourselves up for that one. That we did. So that does mean that at the very least, we'll still get the initial Desert Banshee out of Haunt, so it's not the end of the world, but of course, disappointing to see that we aren't going to get the chance to get all the value out of that. But if we go first here, I think what we do is we probably play aggressively here, use our tactic immediately, and may even pass after our first turn, and just dare our opponents to try to keep pace with us. But if we are to go that route, then what would we like to do that with? I mean, Yghern's obviously our biggest card. There is the risk that since they're monsters, they could use their own Ozzrel and consume our Yghern, which would be rather unfortunate. I think we take that risk, though. Let's go for it. Now, of course, an 18 strength unit is going to catch their attention, so if they have any form of removal, they're almost certainly going to use it here. Okay, ooh, this is interesting. So, it's a relatively low strength card. It will get boosted over time, It will deal a little bit of damage over time as well, and will damage the highest unit by 2. So I think what we do here is this just further reinforces we are passing immediately, and it's going to take them a long time to catch up with Naglfar's crew, and a little bit of time before Yghern ultimately does get destroyed by this. Actually, the frost is going to expire before that happens. So I think we pass, and we see how our opponent reacts to this. And they immediately pass. So that was, in some ways, the hope. It's a relatively simple, straightforward round 1 win, but in some ways, I was almost hoping they would try to play a bunch of cards to catch up with us and give us more or less a guaranteed round 2 and round 3 victory. But okay, so that means we're still going first here in round 2. We could deliberately pass immediately here, force them to play a card, and then go into round 3 with card advantage. Small card advantages at that, but it's something. Like I said, though, there is some risk that they actually consume Yghern out of our discard pile if they have their own Ozzrel. Now, no way of knowing for sure if they actually do have Ozzrel. Other than that, we could potentially play a Haunt. Because like I said, it's actually our worst card right now, but they don't know that we don't have the Death Wish cards to trigger it. So to them, they see this, and they assume that we're going big in round 2, and they might use one of their strongest removal cards, or just play one of their big cards to try to keep pace when we actually don't plan on following up. So let's go with that here. It does mean that we are likely giving up our opportunity to have card advantage going into round 3, because whatever they play here is almost certainly going to outdo 4 strength, unless if they try to banish Haunt with something like Karathi Heatwave, but we'll see. Okay, they're going to go Ice Giant, yeah, so that's bigger. And I suppose we could try to keep pace with them by actually playing cards that we actually want to play, rather than just dumping our worst card out here. But, I mean, we are on even, so I suppose there isn't really any reason not to play here. Like I said, our biggest reason not to have played would have been to pass immediately and force them to go 1 card down for round 3, but that ship has sailed. So, in that case, what do we want here? We want to play Thrive early, so the answer would be the Alpha Werewolf. Don't know how much we're going to do with regard to playing future cards here. I mean, this is already enough to surpass them, yes, but I have to imagine they're going to play more. So are we going the distance here in round 2, or are we saving up for round 3 still, at least to a certain extent? Okay, Werewolf is basically a worse version of the card that we just played. Excuse me, ours is the Alpha Werewolf? So, does mean that we could perhaps play 1 more card here, take the lead, and put some pressure on them. And if we are to go that route, then next lowest card would be you or the Kayran, both of which are 6s, which mean neither of them would actually trigger the Thrive. So I think while we have this out here, let's deliberately go with either the Aen Elle Conquerer or the Kikimore Worker. And I don't have a strong preference either way. I mean, this has a little bit of vulnerability where it could get destroyed if they have damage. Let's play this. And in some ways, we're daring them to do the damage. And we could even, tell you what, I mean, forget about it. We'll just consume it. Okay, now they have an Alpha Werewolf. Okay, sure. But it's not enough to keep pace. We have a 1-point advantage here. I do wonder if they're going to use their leader ability now. They don't. Okay, so I think we almost certainly pass here, and then this is basically the situation we were saying before, where we wanted to pass relatively early and guarantee that we get ourselves card advantages in round 3. We can do that with still getting rid of our weakest card, at least in this situation, and what was a decent card, the Alpha Werewolf, and then also the Kikimore Worker was solid. So we're just hoping that after having saved some of our bigger cards for round 3, that that's going to be enough, especially with 1 card advantage. Okay, they're presumably just going to play what is their worst remaining card here, Wild Hunt Bruiser, and it's just 5 strength, so yeah, that's not a huge deal for them to get rid of that, but 5 strength is 5 strength. Okay, so now they go with another Ice Giant that also has 7 strength, and I think what we do here, how do we want to play you? Because you will damage a random allied unit. Is there a way in which to minimize the effects of that? I don't think so. I think no matter what, we're taking that damage. There's no real way to avoid it. So, I mean, we could have eventually done it in the previous round when we had the Kikimore Worker that had some armor. But I think that means we are basically just going to play our weakest cards first, and that probably means you. Okay, and they have Golyat, which is definitely a strong card. Especially because there's no downside to your Death Wish. Even if we were able to destroy you, we wouldn't be able to get a card from our deck when there is no deck from which to take a card. They go leader ability, but we really don't have any way to react to what they're playing here. It's just coming down to playing our strongest cards here and hoping that that's enough. So I think what we do is we just deliberately play our weakest cards first and hope that if they have any form of removal, that they remove our weakest cards rather than our strongest cards. One potential exception to that would be playing Ozzrel a little bit early in case we have any suspicion that they might consume our Yghern, although I would think that if they did have that, then they would have done that early. So maybe we're safe in that regard, but let's throw down the Kayran here. Okay, and Crimson Curse. Okay, so good thing that we did split our units between two different rows. We're going with the range row, where we'll start getting some bleeding, and then once we already have bleeding units, they'll take damage instead. And yeah, I think in that case what we're going to do here is basically just leave this guy out here, and it's going to eventually get destroyed. Then in that case, I think next on the list is probably you. Put you down here, and although we do have the ability to consume, I think we probably don't go that route. Again, in case they have any form of outright removing one big card, that is probably the best way for us to set ourselves up for failure. Okay, how many provisions does that have? 9, so that's a decent play there, basically on par with our old Speartip. So, question will really end up being, will these last cards be enough for us to catch up here? Of course, they've used their leader ability, whereas we've not yet done that, so that's going to be a difference maker as well. They only have 1 card remaining. So, let's see, this lasts 3 more turns. So, one thing to bear in mind is that we are going to ultimately want to play Ozzrel in our range row, because that's where we can consume for our own graveyard. So we probably do, in fact, play Ozzrel last, now that you have put the Blood Moon here. So that just further reinforces that. Let's play you next, and I mean, in some ways, if you could deal the random 3 damage to our unit in the range row, that would be fantastic, because we don't care much about you. Okay, fantastic. That card was going to get destroyed anyway, and now we've just completely avoided the Blood Moon. Okay, their last card is Geralt Axii. They'll Purify and Reset, and like I said, it was important that we do not consume units in case they had some way to reset like that. So now let's play Old Speartip. And, I mean, we could also go with our leader ability here. And we can probably start doing some mental maths here to figure out if our numbers are going to add up. Now, of course, we still have 1 more turn here. So let's play you. Consume from our deck, Yghern. And it is enough. So we'll take it. Okay, so we'll go against Nilfgaard here. And they'll go first. Okay, and they're going first, so Predatory Dive is certainly not bad here. Love Yghern, love Golyat. Other than that, do we have an easy target to destroy on our side for the Griffin? Could be the Kikimore that Katakan spawns. That wouldn't be bad. Other than that, maybe we get rid of you and get the Kayran. I mean, it's a slightly better version of more or less the same thing. Could potentially try for a little bit more here, though, because we don't have many things that benefit from getting consumed. Aen Elle Conquerer is technically 1 point better in that case. Okay, well, this is an interesting card to play in this seasonal event. Okay, sure. Go ahead and look at the top 3 cards in my deck. I can tell you right now what they are. Other than that, we could immediately destroy this card with Predatory Dive. That's not saying much because it's only 3 strength. But I suppose that's something, when otherwise Predatory Dive will be a little bit tough to make it work. So it's not great in this situation, but I'm not sure it's going to get any better, so let's go for it. Okay, now you're going with a squirrel to banish that card? Sure. Not entirely sure what the deal is with this deck. It feels as though they're focusing on banishment, and perhaps not much else. But in that case, next on our list, suppose could just be... Katakan would be best to play early if we are planning on making this into a long round so that we can trigger the Thrive as many times as possible. Just not sure we want to be going too hard in round 1 here, because I'm getting some signs that perhaps they are not planning on going all that hard, at least in round 1. But I suppose we'll give it a shot, so sure. Okay, now they have a Knife Juggler, which is a pretty weak card here. Okay, but they do lock and damage the Katakan, which is unfortunate. That was another risk of playing it early, was it was going to be a pretty obvious target for that tactic. But at this stage, we could at least destroy one of these cards with the Griffin and forget about the bleed and get a stronger card out there. That's probably worth doing here. It would be enough to pass them. Otherwise, so we could shift gears and just play one big card and hope that that's enough and maybe look to pass early. But I think we use this opportunity to play Griffin because we're not going to have too many times in which we're going to have a card with 2 strength and 2 bleeding on it. So that is basically a free unit to destroy. Okay, well, you're going to destroy the highest unit, so sure. There it goes. But we do have other units that could certainly still fill in. So I think maybe we just go with our weakest option here, the Noonwraith. Would be enough to pass you. This is not a card we particularly want you to destroy because you would get some rats on your side, and you don't have a lot of strength on your side, so we could still catch up to you even if that does happen, but rather not have it come to that. Okay, and yep, well, here comes the damage. It does seem as though their deck is very much focused on denying us from playing just about any card. Now, the hope would be that by playing our weaker cards early, they are using their best removal cards on our weakest cards, and so that means that things like Yghern, Golyat, and the Ice Giants are going to make it through relatively unharmed. Of course, the longer we wait to play Yghern, the less armor it's going to have, and therefore the more vulnerable it's going to be. So we might need to get it out soon, but I'm a little bit concerned by just how many removal cards they have, and I feel like as soon as we play this, it could very well get destroyed, and we'd like to try to bait out a few more of those removal cards first. So let's try maybe an Aen Elle Conquerer next, and then Yghern might be next on the list. Okay, well, the Peasant Militia will boost one of their cards by 2. Sure. Let's, in that case, maybe not play Yghern next, because it does feel as if that is quite a bit of overkill. So let's just throw down another Aen Elle Conqueror, and that should, perhaps, maybe, be enough to take round 1. We'll have to see how much they want to play. Okay, they're going Slave Infantry, which is actually pretty decent in this situation. They can transform that 1-strength rat into a 4-strength Slave Infantry. But as for what that means for us, it does mean that they have retaken the lead here. And we would kind of like to take round 1, although at this point they have 3 cards remaining. And there's still 2 more rounds after this, and we have some pretty decent cards left in our hand. So what I'm thinking is, maybe we actually pass here, take a 1-card advantage going into rounds 2 and round 3, and with the cards that we have, that should be enough for us to take both those rounds, especially with our lead ability as well. So obviously they'll pass as well, and they'll take round 1, but they threw down a lot of weak units, strong removal cards. We're hoping that that means we'll have a relatively safe time playing our remaining units, the big ones. Okay, they immediately pass, which does make some sense here. So in that case, we'll throw down an Ice Giant, which would be our weakest remaining card. So that is a simple, straightforward round 2 victory. Does mean we're on even cards going into round 3, but with a 7, 10, and 13 strength card, not to mention our 9 strength leader ability, I think that might still be good enough. So the thing here is that the longer we wait to play Yghern, the more vulnerable it is. At this point, we play it right now, it's going to have 2 armor, and if it loses that armor, it gets destroyed, so I think we more or less have to play it here. And Our success, or lack thereof, in this match is going to be almost entirely determined by whether or not they can destroy this card. And they can. They'll use Yennefer's Invocation to get rid of it, but that does, of course, mean that one of their 3 cards was entirely devoted to removing that card, and they didn't get any strength on their side in the process. So that might still be good enough for us here. So let's go and continue to go. The weakest card next would be the Ice Giant. If you want to remove that, then fine. Uma's Curse, okay, could be any of a number of things. And we're going with, okay, Geralt Axii to reset us. We aren't boosted. So in that case, we came out ahead, at least getting 7 strength compared to our opponent's 5 strength, so that's good. And now, at this point, we'll play Golyat. Let's deliberately split these cards to different rows. I suppose there's a chance that one of their cards is Assassination, in which case we would actually want to play them next to each other, but we'll play Force of Nature here to get our Woodland Spirit down in this row, and then we're hoping that they don't have something like Treason to deal damage to one of these guys. They'll play their leader ability for 6 strength. Of course, drawing cards does nothing here, but the real question is, what is the last card in their hand? It is Karatha Heatwave to destroy a card, but that's not enough. We'll still take the victory. So there's a look at a monsters deck for the new Banished seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.